Good evening, everyone. My name is Denis Villeneuve. I'm a filmmaker, and I'll have the privilege and the honor to have a brief conversation with one of the greatest filmmakers of our time, the director of Ferrari. Please welcome Michael Mann. Well, Michael, I must say I have seen the movie twice now, and it is such masterwork. I want to congratulate.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I just briefly, I know your love for the car. Obviously, you admire the man. Which Ferrari came first in your life, the man or the car?
The two are actually quite separate. If you if you appreciate these cars, you can buy one or drive one. You don't have to make a movie about them. What was the most compelling thing about this about Ferrari for me is the story. Troy Kennedy Martin. The project began with myself, Sidney Pollack, late Sidney Pollack was a close friend, and Troy Kennedy Martin, and absolutely. And Sidney's influence is felt in this with the romanticism and the passion. And the three of us in the 90s, middle 90s, as we first began this, and then it was a torturous road to to production, trying many times to pull it to make the film happen. And now it's finally has. But it's really the kind of opportunistic. From a narrative sense, fact that in those 3 months of his life, all these emotional and melodramatic dynamics come into play in this kind of crucible, and that enabled us, the narrative, to dive into the kind of inner life of these people, and that's the real heart of it that would keep me attached when I decided, should I abandon this after the next failed attempt to try to get it mounted, then I would get all the way to maybe page 2 and be completely locked into it again. So it's really the inner life of the people that is the core of it.
Yeah, it's a really passion project of yours, because you are carrying this movie since something like 30 years, I think?
30, yeah.
Well, it's like, the thing is that one thing I love, one of many things, but one thing I was impressed by your work is how you find an equilibrium between deep intimacy and masterful action sequence. And again, here, yes, I find that beautiful balance. Can you talk about how you
the whole idea of having these somewhat stately and also monochromatic scenes in which the drama plays out between these fascinating characters, and by monochromatic, I don't mean black and white. I mean like the colors of Enzo's bedroom or Laura's bedroom, where everything is a burnt umber. And the setting up of the conflict, what's going to happen with the potential resolution of the via media of the race, and then countering that with the experience of being in the cars as because the savage primary red driving of the cars, which had to be, we shoot cars a number of different ways. I wasn't interested in observing them with long lenses and rather I wanted to bring the audience in the car and have that experience of kind of the agitation of what it is when you're on the absolute edge of adhesion. So that presented a kind of a narrative counterpoint.
Absolutely. We'll get back to the cars later, but it's not very often that you have the chance to talk to one of your hero, one of your master, and director to director. All right, sexuality. There's something about the way you approach intimacy between men and women that I feel is not voyeuristic. It's very precise. It's very sensual. You capture something so unique, and so it's pure intimacy. And I don't know how you prepare with your actors to go that close.
Well, it starts with what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was if possible bring you into the inner life of the characters, and that's also the attraction of this material of Enzo and the story that kept me in it, in the sense that it's the wonderful duality, the counterpoint within Enzo of two or three different kind of personalities, and the duality and the contradiction of their relationship with Lara, where they can't be apart and they can't be together, where there's this hostility and there's a conjugal partnership, and it probably resonated with the sense of this is what life is like. That was the other big hook, because contradictions between characters or within characters resolve only in movies. In real life, they don't. In real life, you take your contradictions to the grave, okay? And and this story was able to be structured and have a conclusion, and still the characters are unresolved, and they continue to unresolved, for a long time. So it's the dining room scene when, during the debate, or her condemnation of Enzo, being this kind of primitive belief system that she has, with the certainty that she perceives things a certain way and it's true and there's no negotiation. He's responsible for the death of Dino because he was distracted, because he had another wife, he had another co-pilot, he had a co-driver. So that drive of Enzo, who is one way as an instigator of men, as a precise engineer, as somebody who's a race car driver with that addiction, with perfect penmanship in his ledgers. We saw all his ledgers and all his diaries. And everything is totally rational and to a purpose when it has to do with racing. In the rest of his life, he's libidinous, he's chaotic, there's no rudder. It's well, we may ask ourselves, should I do this or should I do that? With Enzo, it was always, why wouldn't I? And with a really dark, wonderfully dark sense of humor.
You're always I would ask my question differently. Do you rehearse a lot? Do you prep a lot with your actors before, or when you start camera, that's the first rehearsal?
I prep a lot, and a lot of it is acquisition of character. For Adam, it was quite a journey to not just be Italian, but be Italian from Modena, to have that attitude, to be in 1957. But even more so, to really have we started by building the core of Enzo. The core of Enzo is a young man who's probably 19 years old in 1918, sitting on a park bench in the rain, having just been turned down by Fiat for a job. His father died a year ago, his brother died a year ago, he's bereft, and he asked himself one question: who shall I be in this world? Which is a terribly romantic notion. The romance is that he can transcend his conditions, his objective reality, and make himself into anybody he wants to make himself into. And that's seemingly impossible given the static class hierarchies of Italy in that period. And what he decides he wants to be, first was an opera singer, but he couldn't sing very well. Then from there he decided, I want to be a race car driver, because there was nothing more romantic in 1920 than being a race car driver. It's like, I want to be an astronaut in 1970, right? And then he pursues that and becomes a race car driver in the 20s, and gets that, what he called my terrible joy, our dangerous passion, this addiction to the ecstasy of when everything's harmonic and it's really working in a car. The guy who called it an ecstasy is Jean Bérat, who drove the Maserati in the first time travel when we intercut with the church. And when he left the track in real life, the Autodromo, he stopped at the Strangolini chicane and watched Castellotti and witnessed the accident in which Castellotti's killed, and wrote a paragraph about it, and used that term about this addiction. But anyway, but that's, that romantic drive at the core of somebody who then strategizes, wears sunglasses to maintain his mystique, always conducts himself with a defensive attitude that no matter how successful something is, tragedy, defeat, a competitor is right around the corner. So some of that, acquiring that, was probably the core. That's where we began. And then, along with spending a lot of time with Piero Ferrari. I've known Piero Ferrari for 20 years. And being in the study in that apartment that Enzo and Lara occupied, which is unchanged since Enzo died, and discovering when we were there with Piero that there was a briefcase that said EF on it. I asked Piero, well, whose is this? He says, my father's. I said, what's inside? He said, I don't know, I never opened it. And we, opened it, and you would explore his life and where did he sleep, what the pajamas he wore. I mean, all the things that we typically do with, when you're really trying to understand somebody. And then the key to it, I could go on for a long time, which I won't, but the key to it was also racing. And understanding what a Lampredi V12 engine looks like from the inside, which if you imagine it's like being an electron microscope inside of a Rolex. It's like a beautiful watch. And so there's a lot of stuff. And it's similar with, with Penelope.
I was about to say, because I think that it's like, in my humble opinion, probably the best of Adam Driver that we've seen on screen ever. It's a fantastic performance. But same for Penelope. Penelope, can you talk a bit about your work with Penelope?
When we were on a Zoom, I was interested in talking to her about being Lara Ferrari. And we got on the Zoom, and about 4 minutes into the conversation, I said, okay, she's Lara Ferrari. And I said, I said, don't say anything. You reserve your judgment because there's supposed to be a spontaneous impulse that you have, and you want to rethink it, and et cetera. And I lasted about another 6 minutes, and then I said, you're Lara Ferrari, let's go do this. The qualities of that kind of, almost kind of visceral certainty that Penelope has, and a kind of a reverence.
Yeah, she can shoot at you. You believe that?
Yeah, she did. I mean, and we did a lot of work. One of the most interesting things we did is the building that you see that Enzo walks into is the Ferrari house, and the Storky Opera really is next door. The mausoleum, it really is the family mausoleum. The barbershop, which is around the corner, is the barbershop. And when Adam's sitting in the chair, that's the chair Enzo was in. He's being shaved by the son of the barber who shaved Enzo. I mean, it's always. So we walked into the bedroom that Lara lived the last 2 years as an invalid, the last 2 years of her life. And we walked in, and there was this bizarre wallpaper. And we duplicated it in the film, and for Penelope and I, knowing a lot about her by that point, it just took our breath away, because it was as if she had decorated this room, the curtains, the walls, everything was the same fabric, and it was as if this was something vivacious from her past, because when Enzo met her in 1921 or 22, she was a cabaret singer in Turin. And he called her La Donna Buffa, which means a card. And she was extroverted, she was vivacious, she was fun to be with. And the core of that woman was still there, and it kind of manifested itself in this wallpaper. So it was, but then I discovered that her doctor was still alive. And her doctor had very affectionate letters, almost love letters, that Enzo was sending her in the middle 70s. This is when they were completely estranged, and they're still corresponding very romantically, even though they're totally estranged. And through that, we really got a sense of this bond, and that's what I mean about the contradictions, about they couldn't be apart, they couldn't be together. 4 years after these events, of 57, so 1961, this absolutely stellar group of engineers in the factory all come into Enzo's office and say, we have to ask you, commendatore, we have to ask you to do us a favor, and you have to keep Lara out of the factory because she's interfering with this and she's interfering with that. And at the time, Enzo and Lara were going through another rough patch. She had slipped and fallen into a canal, and somebody saved her, and they called Enzo and said, I just, pulled Lara was in the canal, and he said, why did you pull her out? In that same year, when this whole staff of engineers shows up, he said, "Oh, they say," and says, "Well, what? Or well, we may consider other, employment opportunities." He fires his entire engineering staff out of solidarity with Lara. I mean, so there was this conjugal partnership between them that you can't really define, but it was so fascinating to deal in the counterpoint of these relationships and these people.
Romanticism, romanticism, very romantic.
It's definitely operatic.
Yes. Talking about opera, there's like a scene, a montage, where we go from the opera to the characters who have memories of the past. So for you, art and nostalgia are very linked like that. Art and nostalgia.
How would I tell them?
Nostalgia, the art, the idea that in the opera scene, the character having remembrance of their past, beautiful scene. So it's a link with nostalgia. Maybe I mispronounced. My English is very bad.
Between my hearing and your accent, we're making a great double act. So I think I'll ask what I think you're asking me. It was first of all that aria in Traviata is about a man who's in love with a woman, and his father talks him into abandoning the woman because she's too lower class and not right for him, and he does so. And now she's sick and she's ill, and he realizes his mistake, and he goes to her and tells her, I realized my mistake. Our life will be terrific. We'll go to Paris. You'll recover, and everything will be fine. And of course, she doesn't, and she dies. And the point is that things are out of sync, just the way they are out of sync in life. So it had a certain parallel to what, to what we did. And what was interesting for me about the scene is I never really had an appreciation of opera before, particularly how opera works on you. And you sit there passively, and there's I think very realistic emotional situations, but they're expressed in such in such an overwrought way that they descend on us and they make us think. So I wanted to shoot the opera singers as if they were the principals and be static with our characters, and then move into their lives, particularly Adalgisa's life, seeing her son go off to war, and being able to visually, make a kind of a footnote to Reno Lardy that the romance began in the bombed-out factory and all that. So that was the reason for it.
The nostalgia, the cars.
Yeah.
I read that we can see that there's almost no CGI in the movie. It's mostly it's all real cars. How did you manage to find cars, Ferraris, and to race with them, like period cars like that? What happened?
We built the cars. everything that a car does is practical. Obviously, the people are started as dummies and they became CGI in the horrendous crash at Woodsole. But all we built them. We did 3D LiDAR scans of real cars that are insanely valuable. And then we put them into a CAD computer program, and then so if you put the skin in, and then we designed the tubular chassis to receive the body of the car, and they had contemporary drivetrains, and they could do 140, 150, were reliable and safe. And so they're all real, except for the Maserati doing the church scene. That's Nick Mason's car. That was actual. The Pink Floyd drummer.
It is name dropping. It is by far one of the, if not the most impressive shots of car racing that I've seen in cinema since a very, very, very long time. If not, it's really impressive, Michael. But it's really. Thank you. And again, it's always the same. When you do it for real, it shows, and to convey that speed, it means that the car had to go that fast.
They had to go that fast, and I raced as an amateur racer in the Ferrari Challenge for about 6 years, and one Saturday I did 75 laps of Road Atlanta, and I put together 3 turns correctly once. But having the kind of imagination that actors and directors have to have, I can imagine what it might be like if you do this routinely. And there was that organic, unified sense of myself and the car. We're all one organism, and I'm thinking a thing, and it's happening. And we are out at the absolute edge of adhesion. So, the unifying high that you get from that is quite extraordinary, and that's the what I was talking about when he said terrible joy or dangerous passion.
I read that one of the actor, is actually a driver, but the others had to be taught.
Patrick Dempsey races. He races for Porsche, and he's had a couple of podium finishes at Le Mans. He's serious, yeah.
But the others, you had they were stunt guys, or did you have?
Everybody trained driving, and so particularly Adam, but everybody trained to drive, and then they did drive depending on what the circumstances was. And we also had stunt drivers. There was to talk about Woodsole, there was a interesting anecdote. I wanted to go out to the actual site that Woodsole where that horrendous crash happened, and we did. And it was exactly as depicted in the film. It's a straight road with a farmhouse and neighboring farmhouses. And as we were there, an elderly gentleman came out of the house with a cane, and he asked what we were doing in Italian. And we translated, and he said, "Oh, I was there." And he said that they were having a Sunday dinner at 3, 4 o'clock. The first cars were coming through because Woodsole is 20 minutes from the end of the race in Russia. And he said, I was there, and we heard the cars approaching, and my older brother, who was 9, ran out, and I was 3, and I ran out after him, and because he ran faster, he got to the edge of the road, and he got killed. And that's where the scene comes from. So the old man was the 3-year-old toddler who was running out. So there was something so Italian about the nature of pedestrians wanting to be as close to the car as possible. And the cars made a lot of power. Obviously the technology, and Ferraris were engineered better than other cars at the time, but the technology wasn't there into the braking and the safety features. Actually, the Enzo's spring team, by the end of 1958, half of them were dead. Collins died in 58. Hawthorne got killed in a road accident in 58.
Wow. It's talking about the cars. I need to talk about Eric Messerschmitt. the DP, your cinematographer, yeah, Eric Messerschmidt, what's his name?
He did Eric Messerschmidt. Eric did. I was interested in Eric from seeing Mank, which he did, and I could tell that it was a tremendous facility with lighting. What I look for in a DP is a lighting cameraman in the European sense, somebody who, ideally Storaro or somebody, and I saw this facility, and then I talked with Eric. He mentioned that he had been a gaffer. So he came up being a gaffer, so his ability to move lights around and be very, very fluid and flexible and plastic with where lights are showing up was absolutely marvelous. And the influence for what I was looking for is the Caravaggio, particularly the way light's handled, and it's not theatrical in the sense that it's lighting the principle, it's lighting a knee, it's lighting a hand. So it's like you light the space and then the actor moves through it. And so it was very much that sense of lighting that I wanted, and Eric was marvelous. I should also mention Pietro Scalia, whose editing I think is quite terrific. The dining room scene was edited in October. I think I made a couple of changes towards the end of October of last year, and I haven't touched it since, but it's really masterful.
I absolutely agree. Let's talk about the sound, because I think you were able to create a Doppler effect in the theater. You know, it's quite impressive the way you use surrounds.
Yeah.
Usually I hate surrounds, but in your movie I think it's masterful. Yeah.
We did the equivalent of race car ADR in the sense that our cars that we built, and Neil Layton built the cars, by the way, who also built the Batmobile in the UK. It was fantastic, and but they were twin turbo 4-cylinder engines. They sounded good, but they weren't anything like the Ferraris. And so we'd always planned to take full competition V12s from that period, from 56 to 62, and go back and duplicate the surroundings. So when the cars are racing through the narrow streets of Ravenna, we duplicated that in a railroad tunnel in the UK with a 250 full competition V12, because there was a sound that to the ear is dangerous, it's exciting, it's powerful, it's scary sometimes.
Sexy.
You can't. Sound design isn't going to do it. You have to go. We put like 8-9 microphones all over one of these cars, and we would duplicate that.
Yeah, it's almost the sound of the Ferraris are almost a character in the movie. Yeah, it's very impressive. And can you talk a little bit about music as well? Because it's always like, it sounds almost like war music at some moment. There's like a pressure like that for the characters, operatic war music.
The music is actually a little bit handled differently than I've handled music in the past, which is interesting for me. And it immerses within the kind of dramatic envelope. It isn't in conjunction with it. And Daniel Pemberton did a brilliant job, I thought, in making a lot of these scenes come alive. And I loved some of the ballads, the Italian ballads that we found from the period.
Michael, I could keep talking with you all night, but I think we are hungry. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Where are we going to see Dune?
So